Hello again, little masters, and welcome to the Prancing Pony Podcast, where all the pint glasses are in the wash. Bob, Knob, get to it.
West to Hall, my friends. I'm Sean Marchese. Joining me from the uttermost west, his anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering cloud and darkness before it. The Tulkas to my Orme, Alan Sisto.
Well done, sir, well done. I should remind your listeners that the sound of your horn is like the upgoing of the sun in scarlet or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Today's episode is a road movie, kind of like those old Bob Hope, Bing Crosby films, except this is the Road to Certain Doom, and Dorothy Lamour is nowhere to be found. We're finally getting to Of the Flight of the Noldor. You know, is anybody in our audience even old enough to get that? Chapter 9. It's a long chapter with a lot of material, so we're only going to cover half of it in this episode so that we can give it the full Prancing Pony Podcast treatment.
That's code for spending 30 minutes on each page, isn't it now?
I think so. Well, my calculations have us at about 12 minutes a page for this episode, but then again, my calculations tell me our listeners didn't get the road movie reference either. So, before we dig in,
you tried.
I did.
You got to try.
I did. Does Barley have anything in his bag for us tonight?
Boy, does he. The entire common room of the Prancing Pony is up in arms, actually. A controversial interpretation I took in regards to Fëanor's epic smackdown of Melkor in Chapter 7, Get Thee Gone, Thou Jailcrow of Mandos. As much as I hate to say the C word, correction.
Not crow.
Nor crow. Well, I just wanted to touch on something. Barliman's got a few notes for me to consider. Mm-hmm. So, in case anybody missed it, this was back in episode 14. And I interpreted Fëanor's insult, Get Thee Gone, Thou Jailcrow of Mandos. I interpreted it as Fëanor basically calling Melkor a servant of Mandos, sort of a lackey, like he was secretly doing Mandos's bidding and coming out there. But a lot of our listeners on Facebook actually raised a collective "What the crow" about that, and really the consensus that I heard out there was no, jailcrow just means jailbird. He's just making fun of him for being an ex-convict. Probably one of those interpretations that's so obvious that I missed it.
It's the simple things, Sean.
It's the simple things sometimes. Now, in my defense, I was thinking about it I had a very elaborate thought behind this. I think, crows are carrion birds. I imagine them doing work, kind of cleaning up messes on the gallows at a prison, and I kind of imagine them as sort of...
Wow, that's grim.
Isn't it? It
is, yeah.
I'm good
You've
at
watched too many horror movies or something, I think.
I have. It's one of my things. But so that kind of gave me this idea of crows as sort of a servant to a jailer in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah.
But so many people were really questioning that. I started to look into it a little bit. Started thinking maybe I was overthinking it. Turns out, I think I was overthinking it a little bit. I actually I looked into some earlier versions of the Quenta Silmarillion that are in Morgoth's Ring. And in an earlier draft, Fëanor actually says, Get Thee Gone Gangrel, Thou Jailcrow of Mandos.
Oh, yes.
And gangrel's another one of those great Tolkien words. It is,
isn't it?
Towers. Yeah. Two Towers, they use it to refer to...
Gangrel creature, yes.
Yeah, right. Frodo and Faramir both use it, I believe. And it basically means like a wanderer, like a vagrant, someone sort of shiftless and good for nothing. So, it's maybe not quite that definitive, but it certainly seems to suggest something more like jailbird than what I was thinking. So it seems like maybe I was wrong. I was wrong.
So from jail crow to eating crow, I see. You did all right, though. Might I add, since we have spent so much time in the last several weeks talking about the admirable character trait of humility, well done, Sean.
Thank you very much.
And if I ever find out that I'm wrong, I will be sure to remember your example.
Well, conveniently, Alan.
Uh-oh. I know where this is going.
We both made a mistake in the episode before that.
Well, at least it wasn't all my fault then.
No, it was... Yes, do not hold me blameless in this.
Oh.
As Míriel might not say. So, folks, remember, we're recording these a couple of weeks in advance, so this might actually seem like ancient history, and it is technically. Maybe it's ancient orthography. But back in episode,
yes.
you like that?
Very
back
well
in
played.
Thank you. But back in episode 13, we talked about the Serati of Rumil,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about the fact that it's a consonantal script. Basically, the letter all the letters stand for consonants, and they use diacritical marks for vowels,
Right.
similar to the Tengwar. We said that was like ancient Hebrew and Arabic. Shooting from the hip, because I don't think
Totally random. Like I might as well have just said it's like French. I mean,
right.
Because nobody's going to call us on this stuff, Sean. We don't have anybody listening.
Nobody's ever going to
us.
call us on this stuff that we just kind of make up as we're going. Actually, fortunately or unfortunately for us, a couple of our listeners are very well versed in Hebrew and Arabic.
Of course they are.
Two of our listeners in particular, Nakhat and Maya, shout out to both of them. Both wrote separately to us and informed us about a couple of things about Arabic, that apparently Arabic actually does have letters that stand for long vowels, just not short vowels.
Oh, well, there you go.
So that was interesting. And then Maya, very cool little detail about ancient Hebrew. She actually gave us a little bit of the history of ancient Hebrew and said that it didn't have vowels in the beginning, but it also didn't have markings for vowels. We were talking about the little diacritical marks.
That's true, actually, and somehow I'd forgotten that. I did know that.
Yeah. She pointed out that didn't the markings for vowels didn't get added until the year 600 AD, actually. But that now modern Hebrew does have markings for both long and short vowels. So, excellent detail there, Maya. Thank you very much for that.
We do appreciate that.
And thank you guys for keeping us honest. We need that. And yes, we are.
It's a little hard to be it's hard to be wrong with you. But it's fair enough. Fair enough. You've changed my courses by counsel, if not by force.
There you go.
So now I think we move on to the discussion, because this is going to be a long one. I just want to warn you, or encourage you, depending on your perspective, we'll be reading quite a few passages tonight, because the text is just fabulous in this chapter.
Mm-hmm. It is. It really is.
Unless you're Fëanor, and then it's pretty bad.
We will be. We will be
for
hard
those,
on Fëanor
for
tonight.
those of you who are Fëanor fans, this episode and the next one. Well, if you want to step aside for a couple episodes, we understand. Just please come back.
Yeah,
we do love you. We do love you. You're wrong.
We want you.
You're wrong about Fëanor, but we love you, and we want you to come back.
If we can admit it, anybody can admit it, right?
That's right. All you got to do is be humbler than Fëanor.
Right. It doesn't take much.
No, that's true. That's a really low bar. Let's just be clear on that. Well, so first thing we get here of the Flight of the Noldor is the worst possible kind of committee meeting. It's dark. Everything's gone wrong. This is like, do we still have our jobs kind of committee meeting.
Last minute committee meeting, like there's no advance notice.
Just no notice at all. This is just telepathically come to
everybody
the
meet by the
Mahanaxar.
dead trees in 5 minutes.
Everybody meet by the dead trees. Oh, that's just harsh. But I do like that it's finally clear. The winds of Manwë had driven away the vapors of death. But we're in a really just a tragic moment here. Mm-hmm. I didn't even mark this passage for reading, but I just love this description that the Zelohar was bare now and black, and she, Yavanna, laid her hands upon the trees, but they were dead and dark, and each branch that she touched broke and fell lifeless at her feet. Mm-hmm. Many voices were lifted in lamentation, and it seemed to those that mourned that they had drained to the dregs the cup of woe that Melkor had filled for them. But it was not so.
It's a beautiful passage,
isn't it?
Drain to the dregs, the cup of woe. It's such a strong image.
Isn't that a strong visual right there? And,
yeah.
And yet it was not so. Once again, Tolkien and his amazingly foreboding phrases.
Yeah. This is the darkest it's going to get, and their sorrows are still not over yet.
No, not even close. But I do have you reading the next passage, because it is absolutely worth reading this one.
Yep. So this is the beginning of the very next paragraph, where Yavanna speaks after touching the trees. Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, "The light of the trees has passed away, and lives now only in the Silmarils of Fëanor."
And everybody's eyes turned. Anyway,
and he's kind of like shrinking into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Foresighted was he. Even for those who are mightiest under Ilúvatar, there is some work that they may accomplish once, and once only. The light of the trees I brought into being, and within Ea I can do so never again. Yet, had I but a little of that light, I could recall life to the trees ere their roots decay, and then our hurt should be healed, and the malice of Melkor be confounded.
Oh boy, that's a big ask.
It is, and yet
Yeah.
I really focused in on this, but a little of that light.
Yeah. Just a little.
I don't think that she's asking to destroy the Silmarils. I think that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like maybe if she could just get a little bit of the light out of it, I don't know. There might be a way.
It could. I suppose. I was thinking of it in the sense of, how we've talked about light as a liquid.
Mm-hmm.
This sort of or plasma, maybe. I don't know what it is in this environment, but I wonder if that's what she means. Like she's gonna have to crack open the Silmarils, like
and pour a
can
little
of
bit
something
out.
and pour it.
But then you wonder if maybe there's a way to seal them up again. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, Fëanor would be the only one who'd know that.
Yeah.
And he may not even know.
And he has a response to that.
He
which
does.
We'll get to in your passage.
Yeah, but not quite yet. I really wasn't it interesting that even for those who are mightiest, there's something you can do only once. And of course, I think we see some other examples of that. I don't think Ali's going to be able to create another race of sentient beings. Well, if nothing else, Ilúvatar won't let him, right?
He probably won't.
I won't even try.
Won't have the chutzpah to do that again.
Yeah, Yvonne just kind of,
It was merciful. It was merciful once, dear. He won't be merciful.
Don't gamble on that again.
But we did see this with the lamps for sure, and I think we even talked about this back in chapter 1. That once the lamps were destroyed, they couldn't just create them again. They had to do something different.
They did. You're right. There is a nature of their power that's finite and limited. It kind of makes me think, and we'll see more of this later about Melkor spending his spirit.
His finite power, yeah.
The finite power, and of course we see it in Sauron for sure in Lord of the Rings. But there's a little bit of that parallel there, isn't there? That this is not, they're not infinitely powerful beings, as powerful as they may be, but,
right.
Absolutely.
And there's something to, this idea that some things marred can never be returned to the way they were.
Even Arda itself, yeah.
Even Arda itself. And I think, I always think back to Tolkien's letter 181, I think it was, where he talks about the elvish weakness.
Oh, yes, about the favorite chapter and not wanting to keep going forward.
Yeah, right. Being naturally to regret the past and become unwilling to face change. And
that's their weakness all through the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think, in saying that, I think Tolkien is implying that change really is a good thing. And I think, if you look at it in the...
Or at the least context, inevitable. And therefore should be embraced adapted to.
Well, exactly. I mean, he says in that letter, I believe, that it's to resist change is against the design of God. And we would certainly see that in Ilúvatar's hand, and the way Ilúvatar has a way of changing.
That's a good
not
point.
Changing, but turning everything to ultimately something good comes out of everything.
That's a good point, because we talk about nature and the fact that we need to act in accordance with our nature, mortals versus immortals and things like that. And it's the same here. I mean, the nature of the world is to be a fallen world and for bad things to happen. And for us to pretend, to put our heads in the sand and pretend that's not going to happen is not helpful.
Yeah.
There's
another way to see that might also be to say that the fact that things don't last forever is part of what makes them beautiful. Part of what makes them precious.
And remember, we talked about that when we talked about the creation of the Silmarils. That was it a wise idea to create, to make something imperishable in a world that is full of perishment?
Yeah,
I could use that word.
Nice word.
You keep on using that word.
I do not think it means what you think it means.
I don't think it's a word.
Actually, that one probably does mean what you think it means. I just don't know if it's a word.
It's not a word. One thing that also came to mind, we've talked a lot on several occasions about the teamwork, like you just mentioned the lamps. And I remember with that, there were 3 different Valar involved in terms of the making of the pillars, the making of the lights, and the hallowing of the lamps. Here we're looking at teamwork of Valar and elves. In the most desperate of times, we need both. We need Yavanna and Fëanor. And it's a matter of we need teamwork, and that theme we'll see over and over again. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But
that's a really good catch. Yeah,
but Fëanor doesn't want to play.
No,
Does he?
Of course not, because he's Fëanor.
Because he is. I'm going to go ahead and read this next passage. Forgive my Valar voices. I'm not sure I can do 3 of them, but we'll try. Or 4 of them, actually, now that I see the rest of it.
I can't wait for this.
Then Manwë spoke and said, Hearest thou, Fëanor, son of Finwë, the words of Yavanna? Wilt thou grant what she would ask? There was long silence, but Fëanor answered no word. Then Tulkas cried, Speak, O Noldor, yea or nay. But who shall deny Yavanna? And did not the light of the Silmarils come from her work in the beginning? But Ali the Maker said, Be not hasty. We ask a greater thing than thou knowest. Let him have peace yet a while. But Fëanor spoke then, and cried bitterly, For the less, even as for the greater, there is some deed that he may accomplish but once only, and in that deed his heart shall rest. It may be that I can unlock my jewels, but never again shall I make their like, and if I must break them, I shall break my heart, and I shall be slain, first of all the Eldar in Aman. Not the first, said Mandos, but they did not understand his word. And again there was silence, while emo Fëanor brooded in the dark. Brooded in the dark.
Brooded in the dark.
Isn't that what, like, our classmates did? I said emo, but for people of our age, it's goth.
It was goth when we were kids, yeah.
Guys wearing black lipstick and white face paint, brooded in the dark at the dances because nobody wanted to dance with them because they were freaking death. I mean, who wants to dance?
I am going to admit something publicly, that I went through a very brief goth phase when I was very young.
If you've got pictures, we got to put those on the site.
Nope, I do not, and that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. I'd be absolutely horrified.
Didn't go all the way. It was just the black.
No. Doesn't he just sound like this total whiner? I mean,
he's such a drama queen here.
If I must break them, I shall
it'll break
my
heart. It's like Blanche Dubois, like just
how does he know that breaking these Silmarils is going to kill him? Seriously? I mean, take the thing that you love the most, that you've created, that you've made. Van Gogh, take his greatest piece of art, or take, I'm just trying to think of it. Take anything, anybody.
Any magnum opus that any
Yeah. Really, it's going to kill you? It's going to literally slay your flesh? I don't think so.
He's so delicate, though, Alan.
That's true. He's a snowflake. He's a snowflake. We talked about that. His dad has to make a safe space for him in Formenos.
Fëanor's a snowflake. We got safe. I swear, there's so much in that passage.
There's
that
a ton
I
there.
Love to spend time on, but since we're talking about Fëanor right now, I mean,
we'll talk about the others too. But yeah,
obviously it's selfish.
It is.
Can you imagine Frodo? Can you imagine any hero of Tolkien's, any hero in any story that you've ever read?
Any story you've ever read,
any story you've ever read. Can you imagine the hero of that story saying, I can't do that, it would break my heart? Can you imagine Frodo saying, Gandalf, I can't take the ring to Mordor, it would break my heart?
Oh, man. Or Aragorn,
Actually would, and he did it anyway.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I guess.
I guess if you call it that.
But yeah, really,
unbelievable.
This selflessness and the sacrifice that we see so often in Tolkien's heroes.
From any decent character. Any decent character.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
But yeah, not Fëanor. Not Fëanor. But looking back at some of the things that the Valar say, Tolkien's point is really valid. We talked about that in Chapter 7. There's a line there, for Fëanor began to love the Silmarils with a greedy love, and grudged the sight of them to all save his father and his 7 sons. He seldom remembered now that the light within them was not his own.
Yeah, absolutely. I had that same note here. He reminds him. But who shall deny Yavanna? I mean, that's a telling one too.
That really is.
Who shall deny any of the Valar? Really?
Well,
remember, child of Eru. But
exactly. Remember your place.
Yeah, exactly. But just the light of the Silmarils came from her work in the beginning, and this is something that he has forgotten time and time again.
Oh yeah. Unbelievable. But
yeah.
it's interesting that Aule asks for more time. I think only as we've gone through this in the podcast and we've studied a little bit more of Aule, and to be honest, with some of the stuff we got out of the debate of the Valar with the Statute of Finwë and Míriel, how clearly Aule really, really favors Fëanor, and
He really is on Team
specific,
Fëanor.
and the Noldor in general. I mean, they're his in a way, right? They're very closely tied to him. He's the craft guy. They're the crafty kinship group, and he, of course, is the crafty Finwë. I'm sorry, that's well, he was. He's Kuru Finwë, so he's the crafty Finwë. Mm-hmm. But boy, it's his bias is showing.
It is. Well, he's really giving Fëanor a lot more credit than he deserves. I mean, it's great that he seems to think that Fëanor will come around. I mean, I think that's what he's.
That's true.
implying.
I think he is kind of optimistic. Yeah,
just give him some time. He needs to think about it. I appreciate this. Well,
but Fëanor doesn't even take the time, does he? He spoke.
No. He spoke then, and he cried bitterly.
Isn't it bitterly? Bitterly did Matan rue the day.
Yeah.
Bitterly did the Noldor atone for their folly, and then Fëanor cries bitterly.
A lot of bitter.
It's a bitter place. bitter butter.
Bitter.
I don't know. I'm just trying. Oh man, just a mess.
And then Mandos. I mean, the first is one of my favorite Mandos.
Isn't that an awesome
in the
line?
Entire book.
That's right up there with all those other Mandos party quotes.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Fëanor goes on to say some not such nice things. Well, first he thinks them, right? It isn't he the same as they? They're all Vala.
Melkor is a Vala, just
right?
Them, yeah.
And so he understands their hearts. A thief shall reveal thieves.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever, dude. But then he blows it. Then he speaks out loud and he says, "This thing I will not do of free will. But if the Valar will constrain me, then shall I know indeed that Melkor is of their kindred."
Yeah, drama queen much again.
Seriously,
okay, if you're gonna force me, then I'll know you're just as bad as Melkor. I mean,
But it's like I was thinking about this. If the Noldor were indeed thralls, as he has claimed over and over, wouldn't the Valar constrain him in order to resurrect their greatest creation?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, the fact that they don't make him do this is evidence that he's been wrong all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, but no, he doesn't see that, of course.
No, of course not. But,
and
because he's blinded. I mean,
he is. His pride and his greed and his lust have blinded him. No doubt about it.
Kind of runs the gamut on those deadly sins we talked about last time.
Yeah. and later on we're gonna not until next episode, Wrath. Crazy stuff. But I wanted you to touch. There's a line here about Nienna that, and I let you take the Yavanna and the Nienna stuff. I don't know why. It just seems to fit. I don't know what that says about you, Sean.
I love the ladies, Alan.
You do. You're good with them. And anyway, take that spot. After Mandos says something nowhere near as exciting by saying, "Thou hast spoken."
I do think just by saying "Thou hast spoken," that to me is Mandos for we got it. Just shut up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're done now. That's your turn is over.
All right, you've spoken. Now
and again, though, it also shows we're not even going to persuade you. We're not going to try again.
Yeah, that's true.
We've given you your shot. Here was your opportunity to redeem your behavior, and you have not.
You have no interest.
And that's what Mandos does. He's a judge. There you go. Case dismissed.
Right. Good point. So all that said, and Nienna arose and went up onto Azelahar, and cast back her gray hood, and with her tears washed away the defilements of Ungoliant. And she sang in mourning for the bitterness of the world and the marring of Arda.
Wow. The first thing I remember when we were back in chapter 1, which feels like about a year ago, but I know it's just a couple months, there's a line at the creation of the trees, and we speculated at that time. So here's the line from chapter 1, talking about the city of Valmar. Before its western gate there was a green mound, Azelohar, that is named also Corolaire, and Yavanna hallowed it, and she sat there long upon the green grass and sang a song of power, in which was set all her thought of things that grow in the earth. But Nienna thought in silence, and watered the mold with tears. Now I know Nienna cries all the time. Probably pretty hard for her not to water everything with tears, but I think there's some specific...
Well, there's a lot to cry about.
There is a lot to cry about. And I know we speculated at that time, is she crying maybe in part because she has an idea, if not a specific knowledge? And,
That's right. We did talk about that. I think you brought that up.
That these are temporary things, that they're so beautiful, but that they will not last forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Valar, some of them have knowledge. I mean, obviously, you know, Mandos almost certainly knows or knew, but you know, was there a little bit of that prediction there, that little bit of reality, knowing that something's going to happen one day?
There very well could be. I mean, we've speculated in the past about, I think, Nienna and Ulmo also, just sort of the idea that they might have actually been a little bit closer to the thought of Iluvatar in some ways, or kind of knowing a little bit more of Iluvatar's thought, and maybe there is maybe there is a little bit of foreknowledge there.
And it's all speculation.
Total speculation, but it's interesting.
It fits, and I love the visual that we had from chapter 1. Now we have her tears, instead of, you know, watering the mold with her tears, now she's washing away the defilements of Ungoliant. And then, of course, there's the whole idea that, you know, she's mourning for the bitterness of the world and the marring of Arda. You know, this is Arda marred. It's just a reminder of the fallen world, isn't it?
Yeah, that really takes it back to that idea of chapter 1 when Arda was, when Arda was really marred for the first time.
Yeah, after the lamps,
Yeah, and it's a reminder that I would say that the death of we talked about the fact that the death of the trees is a turning point. I think we mentioned that in the last episode.
Crucial turning point.
But this is a reminder that, everything that's going to happen later in the book is going to be in some way a result of the death of the trees. But the death of the 2 trees is not the cause. It's really a symptom of a greater disease. It's a symptom of Arda Mard.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say Nienna's got a lot to cry about.
She really does. I mean, we touched on that deeply a couple weeks ago when we talked about the statue, or a couple episodes ago when we talked about the statue of Finwë and Míriel, and the debate of the Valar that we pulled from Laws and Customs of the Eldar. You know, part of their whole thing was, is this because of Arda Mard, or is it because of the nature of you know, what she'd done in terms of the birth of Fëanor? And really only Aule was on the side of that this was going to happen. Even, you know, everybody else was like, no, dude, this is Arda Mard.
Right.
and you know, Manwë talks about the fact that we have to remember justice will be imperfect because this is an imperfect world. But yeah, we're reminded once again, this is not the world that the Valar intended to create with their music. This is a flawed world.
Yep.
Whether it's different from the world that Iluvatar intended to create. I mean, I think that's one of those things where there's a duality. There's a conflict that we just have to say, okay. And that's obviously this isn't what Iluvatar intended, but at the same time, none of this has surprised him. Right. So which is it?
And
the answer is yes. Spabimi comes right back, which I feel like I have to still announce that for our newer listeners. That's shall prove but mine instrument. And we tried to get fancy with an acronym, Spabimi. And that is the idea that Iluvatar will always take the evil that's done and turn it to good. Good that the evil person may not have ever even imagined, as the passage says in Eindolindale. Boy, boy, will that happen out of this. I mean, you are not kidding.
My favorite chapters, as I think you know, the entire book.
Yeah.
As the last fruits, so to speak, of the 2 trees. Just fantastic stuff, and I can't wait to get there.
I know, but we're going to have to wait.
It'll be a few months.
We're going to have to wait like 10 months. I think we calculated it's going to be like March or April. I don't remember. But I guess, we're coming up pretty fast. I mean, it's hard to believe we're already, where we are. This episode will be airing, late July, early August. So, we're moving along.
Yeah.
For which, our listeners, we thank you. We wouldn't keep doing this if there were like 12 of you, so thank you.
that has been very, very, very just surprising and wonderful to see.
It's been a real encouragement.
See the response from so many of you out there. Thank you.
Yeah, we do appreciate that. And now we're going to bring you new tidings of evil. Just because we love you so much. I'm not going to read this because I want to have you read the next paragraph, but here we get messages from Formenos, and this darkness, the cloud, the unlight of Ungoliant had come northward, and darkness issued from this, and Melkor was there. He kills Finwë, spilled the first blood in Aman. I love this, though, for Finwë alone had not fled from the horror of the dark. There's a little bit of redemption there, and we're going to get to some more redemption for Finwë.
That's a good point.
But isn't that amazing?
It's a really fast.
Yeah, you could totally miss that.
Blink and you miss it. But yeah, that's true.
He is the only one, the king, who did not flee from the horror of the dark.
And we've said a lot of bad things about Finwë in the last couple of episodes.
He's made some bad choices, yeah.
But this is cool. This is
it
really
really
cool.
is. Yeah. Stand and, wow. We see later on about how, let's see if I can actually find it right now because it's worth taking a look at, is that after Melkor gets his way back to Middle-earth, before his face, all save the mightiest sank into a dark pit of fear. So, looking backwards at this part about Finwë being the one who didn't flee from the horror of the dark does speak very, very well of his courage.
Yes, absolutely.
But Melkor breaks the stronghold and takes the Silmarils. They are gone.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Fëanor do, Sean?
Then Fëanor rose, and lifting up his hand before Manwë, he cursed Melkor, naming him Morgoth, the black foe of the world. And by that name only was he known to the Eldar ever after. And he cursed also the summons of Manwë, and the hour in which he came to Taniquetil, thinking in the madness of his rage and grief that had he been at Formenos, his strength would have availed more than to be slain also, as Melkor had purposed. Then Fëanor ran from the Ring of Doom and fled into the night, for his father was dearer to him than the light of Valinor or the peerless works of his hands. And who among sons, of elves or of men, have held their fathers of greater worth?
Wow. Morgoth. We finally get the name, don't we?
Finally get that name, and probably should just go ahead and point out, for first-time readers, this is the name by which Melkor will be known for the rest of the Silmarillion. Pretty much the rest of Middle-earth's history.
Yep.
And I think at this point is when Alan and I are going to switch to calling him Morgoth for the most part.
We will. We might slip now and then, but...
Sure, yeah. Especially if we're referring back to,
That's true.
Stuff that's already happened. But yeah, definitely is Morgoth now. It means the black foe, literally black foe, and then sort of the connotation of black foe of the world.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it's really kind of sad. I mean, it's kind of funny because we've been making fun of Fëanor's emo and his overreacting to everything.
Yeah.
But just in his pride and his blind rage, he's just cursing everything. I mean, he's cursing.
He's put on equal level Morgoth and the summons of Manwë.
And the summons of Manwë to come to his party.
I know.
Yeah.
And the hour in which he came, that's good. Like the text says, like anything would have happened differently.
Right.
The only way something would have happened differently is if both Finwë and Fëanor had acted properly in the first place. Finwë should have come, or should never have been in Formenos, should have stayed and been king.
He should have stayed in Tirion.
You're the freaking king. You should be king of your people. Unkinged. That isn't even a word. But Tolkien wrote it. It's a word. But if Finwë had just come, and if Fëanor had decided he wasn't going to deny the side of the Silmarils, what a different world we'd have right now.
Yeah, exactly. If Finwë had just been there, and if the Silmarils had been there, they would not have been lost.
Yeah, Finwë would be dead. The Silmarils would be here, and we'd be like, yeah, whatever. We'll just restore the trees.
And the trees would have been restored, and it would have been fine.
Well, maybe. I still don't know if Fëanor would have broken the Silmarils. It's still
questionable whether Fëanor would have actually given over the Silmarils, but at least maybe Tolkien could have actually constrained him. Finally made good on those imagined threats.
It is ironic, though, that the widower of the only elf to have died up to this point is now the first one to get killed. Isn't there something just a little bit, I mean, just really? Really? He spends all this time trying to get permission to get a second wife. Yeah. And then he goes and dies.
It's a really, we talked about this before recording, and that never hit me quite like that. But yeah, it's like, and how much time did we spend talking about all that went into that decision? It was not a decision made lightly by the Valar.
No, not at all.
And now it's like, oh well.
Yeah.
Now he's dead.
Oh well. And I want to touch on something before we get into a really lengthy sidebar. This whole idea that, the text that talks about how his father was dearer to him, even in the peerless works of his hands. We're talking the Silmarils. Mm-hmm. And who among sons of elves or men have held their fathers of greater worth? First, I've got to say he had an interesting way of showing his love for his father. How about suggesting you go and be king? Dad, go do your job. But, we'll take the text at face value. He loved his dad. Let's say he really did. But can we honestly say that a single redeeming characteristic, in this case, love or honor for one's father, is enough to make someone who does evil things not evil? I mean,
he sure was a bad guy, Alan, but he did love his dad.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, what if Hitler loved his dad? Does that make him a misunderstood guy?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But this is like the place where all the Fëanor lovers hang their hat. This is like, but he loved his dad.
Well,
yeah, but he still killed a bunch of
love is one of. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Oh,
filial
man.
love is like one of the most basic human decency kind of things you can do is love your parents.
Seriously, my 4-year-old loves me, but he might still be a crazy sociopath who could, like, burn down half. No, he won't be. I'm just saying he's not going to be Fëanor. Right. He's awesome.
Right.
My boy, because I'm not Finwë. I'm not going to helicopter my little snowflake.
No, exactly. You're going to tell him when he does something wrong.
I've given him timeouts. I don't think Finwë's going to do that.
Well, Fëanor got a timeout, and look how good that did.
Bad things happen from that. Oh, man.
But you're right to bring that up, because that is one of the things that a lot of the Fëanor apologists tend to point to. Like,
probably because it's the only positive thing about him.
Right. He was really skilled, and he loved his dad.
Hero.
Right. But, we even talked a couple of episodes ago about the idea that Fëanor and Finwë's love was a little codependent and unhealthy. And totally. I think there's, who has held their father of greater worth? Well, maybe it's not a good thing to love even a parent that much, much, because they're an enabler, basically.
Yeah.
If
you love them so much that you turn and call the powers of you curse the powers of the world because they summoned you.
Right. And you weren't there to die by his side.
Yeah. Which really, I mean, it would have been better, at least from the Tellery's perspective, if he had been at Formenos. But we'll get to that next time.
Better from the Noldor's perspective too. Honestly,
you're not kidding. You're not kidding. But you know what? I want to bring in a really cool sidebar. It has nothing to do with the text, but don't worry, it absolutely fits. If you remember a few episodes ago when we did spend all that time on Finwë and Míriel, and we talked about Míriel saying, I don't want to go back to my body. I'm done with it. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm not, it's not mine anymore. Mm-hmm. And she didn't want to leave Mandos. She, was perfectly content to be dead. And they had to wait a significant period of time before they could pronounce that doom and give Finwë the privilege of being able to get remarried. Mm-hmm. All of that debate. Now we get some closure from that. So I'm going to read some passages because it's not in the text, so those of you who've been reading along will not have read this. This comes from the Laws and Customs of the Eldar. We're going to go back to that in Morgoth's Ring. For those of you who do have that, this is from pages 248 to 250. And this is really cool about what happens with Finwë and Míriel after his death. We've already touched on a little bit of redemption for Finwë because he was the only one who didn't flee from the horror of the dark. We'll take a look at what he does now. In that evil time, Finwë was slain by the martyr himself, and his body was burned as by lightning stroke and was destroyed. Then Míriel and Finwë met again in Mandos, and lo, Míriel was glad of the meeting, and her sadness was lightened, and the will in which she had been set was released. And when she learned of Finwë all that had befallen since her departure, for she had given no heed to it nor asked tidings until then, she was greatly moved. As she said to Finwë in her thought, I erred in leaving thee and our son, or at the least in not soon returning after brief repose, for had I done so, he might have grown wiser.
That's, maybe a little bit.
Maybe, yeah, I'm just thinking. But isn't it cool? Again, we talk about recognizing when you've done something wrong and then and owning up, and she does that here. And I love this next bit. It's so mature. But the children of Indus shall redress his errors. Not that Fëanor is going to be very pleased about that. But the children of Indus shall redress his errors, and therefore I am glad that they should have being. And Indus hath my love. How should I bear grudge against... Yeah, I know. Wow. How should I bear grudge against one who received what I rejected and cherished what I abandoned? Wow. I mean, how many ex-wives would say that to, That's so cool. That's beautiful.
That really is cool. That's a beautiful sentiment. It's
totally selfless. Totally, yeah.
Was it Mandos when we talked about that whole thing? Was it Mandos who talked about the fact that the children of Indus are going to go on to do some really great things?
Yeah.
And we talked about who some of those, some of the most powerful, wisest, and greatest Noldor in history are. And it's one thing to hear that from a Vala who's got foreknowledge of the future. It's another thing entirely. It just makes it so much more personal
Yeah.
just to hear it from Míriel herself to say, the children of Indus are going to they're
gonna
going to
help
redress
fix
his
Fëanor,
errors. They're going
yeah.
to help fix some of his errors, and I'm glad that they should have being. Wow,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
isn't it? Is? And then she goes on to talk about what she wants to do. She says, "Would that I might set all the tale of our people and of thee," talking to Finwë, "and thy children in a tapestry of many colors, as a memorial brighter than memory. For though I'm cut off now from the world, and I accept that doom as just, I would still watch and record all that befalls those dear to me, and their offspring also." He later added in a different version of the text one more line saying, "I feel again the call of my body and its skills." And Finwë says to Vaire, now Vaire is the wife of Mandos, or of Namo, to be specific.
Yep.
And so he comes to her and says, "Dost thou hear the prayer and desire of Míriel? Why will Mandos refuse this redress of her griefs, that her being may not be void and without avail? Behold," and I love this is owning up. Good job, Finwë. "I instead will abide with Mandos forever, and so make amends. For surely if I remain unhoused and forego life in Arda, then his doom will be inviolate." "So thou may deem," answered Vaire. "Yet Mandos is stern, and he will not readily permit a vow to be revoked. Also he will consider not only Míriel and thee, but Indus and thy children, whom thou seemest to forget, pitying..." I know. This is what happens when you have two wives, dude.
Right. Wow.
"Pitying now Míriel only. Thou art unjust to me in thy thought," said Finwë. "It is unlawful to have two wives, but one may love two women." I'm not going there.
Yeah, no.
But
Move along.
one may love two women, each differently and without diminishing one love by another. Love of Indus did not drive out love of Míriel. So now pity for Míriel doth not lessen my heart's care for Indus. But Indus parted from me without death. I had not seen her for many years, and when the maror smote me, I was alone. She hath dear children to comfort her, and her love, I deem, is now most for Ingoldo. That's Fingolfin's mother name, the Amalese.
Oh, yeah, right. It's Fingolfin, basically.
It's Fingolfin.
That's the name his mother gave him. Okay.
Right. His father she may miss, but not the father of Fëanor, or Fëanor. That's the older version of Fëanor's name.
Mm-hmm.
But above all, her heart now yearns for the halls of Ingwe and the peace of the Vanyar, far from the strife of the Noldor. Little comfort should I bring her if I returned, and the lordship of the Noldor hath passed to my sons. But when Mandos was approached, he said to Finwë, "It is well that thou desirest not to return, for this I should have forbidden, until the present griefs are long past." I know. Yeah. You're right. You're not going back.
You're not going back.
But at least not for a while. At least he doesn't, he doesn't get the Fëanor treatment. He's just until the present griefs are long past.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I love this phrase, "It is better still that thou has made this offer, to deprive thyself of thy free will, and out of pity for another. This is a counsel of healing, out of which good may grow." And that just reminds me of what we talked about when we talked about that debate, what Manwë said, that healing cometh only by suffering and patience, and maketh no demand, not even for justice.
Yeah.
And Mandos echoed that when he said that healing by final hope is a law which one can give to oneself only. And that is exactly what Finwë is doing here. It's so good to see Finwë redeeming himself, and you really wish his son would follow suit.
Yeah. It's such a great, I'm glad you found this, because that's such a good, it's a happy ending for Finwë.
It is, and for Finwë and Míriel, because we're going to get even more here about Míriel. And I apologize for the length of this sidebar, but because this text isn't readily available, I felt like I needed to read as big chunks as I could. But so then Nienna comes to him and renews her prayer for Míriel, because that's what Nienna does, right? She's the pity. She has pity for everybody. So this time,
Nienna's pity party.
Nienna's pity, except it's always parties for other people. It's never for herself, which I love that. So she comes to Mandos and again makes that request on Míriel's behalf. He consented, accepting the abnegation. Now that's a big word. It means an act of rejection or refusal, surrender. So accepting the abnegation of Finwë as her ransom. So then the Fëa of Míriel was released and came before Manwë and received his blessing. And she went then to Lorien and re-entered her body and awoke again as one that cometh out of a deep sleep. And she arose and her body was refreshed. But But after she had stood in the twilight of Lorien a long while in thought, remembering her former life and all the tidings that she had learned, her heart was still sad, and she had no desire to return to her own people. Therefore she went to the doors of the house of Vaire, and prayed to be admitted, and this prayer was granted, although in that house none of the living dwelt, nor have others ever entered it in the body. But Míriel was accepted by Vaire, and became her chief handmaid. All the tidings of the Noldor down the years from their beginning were brought to her, and she wove them in webs historical. Actually, Tolkien uses the words historial, which is simply archaic for historical. So she wove them in webs historial, so fair and skilled that they seemed to live, imperishable, shining with a light of many hues, fairer than are known in Middle-earth. This labor Finwë is at times permitted to look upon. And still she's at work, though her name has been changed. For now she is named Firiel, which to the Eldar signifies she that died, and also she that sighed. Wow.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome? But
if I recall, there's some fun etymological things with that
yeah,
Fire root, right?
Yeah, there really is, because it has to do with the exhalation. It's to expire in terms of breath, and apparently she sighed at her death. And eventually the elves used that word, that root, to describe death for men. Let's see if I've got it. It's fire, which is spelled like fire, but with the
umlaut over the E. Yeah.
So they'd had no word for death prior to not
right.
like this. They had words for being destroyed or killed, right? But so she sighed at last. She gave up her breath when her spirit left her body. But then that word fire, the Eldar used ever afterward for the death of men. So yeah, it's interesting. But the thing that really grabbed me. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say something silly here. I think I want to say it might even be related to the word Fëa, which means spirit.
I don't think it's unrelated. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I don't have that in front of me, but I've come across that root before, and I haven't read this whole passage that you just read, so it must have been from somewhere. But anyway, yeah, just a neat thing.
But you know what I really loved was the description of her work. Catch this again. So fair and skilled, these tapestries, that they seemed to live, imperishable, shining with a light of many hues. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
What else is imperishable and
They
shines?
shone like the stars of Varda, and yet as were they indeed living things, they rejoiced in light and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. The Silmarils themselves.
So her tapestry actually echoes the Silmarils, echoes
really
the creation
does.
of her son.
Isn't it amazing?
That is really cool.
So rich. And that's, just beautiful.
You know what else? One other thing I love about that tapestry idea is we're not going to get to this tonight because it's in the second half of the Flight of the Noldor, but there's Fëanor's comment to Mandos as they're leaving, where he says that the deeds that we shall do shall be the matter of song until the last days of Arda.
Yeah.
Which is
actually no, we do get that today. That's in the first. That's with the first messenger. I think so. I think we will get to it tonight.
We might. I can't. Yeah, maybe.
That's not at the last. Yeah, there's the two. There's the Herald, and then there's
the Herald, and then there's Mandos.
Then there's the Doom.
Mandos, but,
yeah.
I'm
not sure. No, you're right.
It's on page 88. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
bad.
later. We'll get to it next time.
We get something different here about the hurt that at least that I will do to the foe of the Valor. That's what I was thinking. But.
Right. But I love that thing. I love that bit about the matter of song because, the matter of song is just another way of saying that we'll go down in history. That people will remember our deeds forever.
And they will because
they will.
Firiel is going to put them in this tapestry. Yeah. And I love that Finwë gets to see it.
Yeah, that's
really
he
doesn't
cool.
get to see her. She's got a body. He doesn't, so they don't get to hang out. But, and there's one last cool little tidbit I wanted to throw in here that I caught from reviewing this passage. First, we note that Finwë and Indis were already estranged, right? In another cool little footnote that never made the published version, we're told specifically that Nerdnell did not go into banishment with Fëanor. We pretty much assumed that,
right?
But we're specifically told that she didn't, and asked leave to abide with Indis, whom she had ever esteemed, though this had been little to the liking of Fëanor.
Wow.
Gee, you think?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wait, my wife likes my stepmother more than what? So I love though that she that we find out what happened to Nerdnell. She goes and hangs out with Indis in the Vanyar.
And that's another one of those things about Nerdanel that actually teaches you more about Fëanor than it does about her, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, totally.
You know, we had no reason to believe that Indus was anything other than a wonderful elf woman. You know, trophy wife, maybe. We called her that once.
Yeah. You know what's funny is how many people agreed with me when I thought, oh man, I'm in trouble for this. But everybody's like, no, I think you're right.
Cool. You were feeling a little sheepish about that. You were vindicated a little bit. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. That was funny.
But you know, that this tells us that, you know, Indus was fine. That it was Fëanor who had the problem with her. There was nothing wrong with her. You know, it was all him. Not that surprises us at this point.
Of course not.
But it's just one of those nice little details.
Agreed.
That's
well,
really...
I know there's a really long sidebar, folks, and I thank you for your indulgence. But I hope that you really enjoyed that, because I love that closure for Finwë and for Míriel. You know, we left Míriel, and it was sad. You know, here she was stuck in Mandos forever, and your heart went out to her a little bit. You know? I mean, even though her decision to go and then to stay there was really pretty poor, it was neat to see her redeem herself, and you know, own up to her mistake, and then to see Finwë do the same and say, no, you know what, I'm going to stay here because that will meet the regulation of the law here. It'll keep it right, but it'll give her the opportunity to do what she wants to do. That is total selflessness. Yeah, that's true. Is hero stuff.
Yeah. So on today's installment of Noldor behaving badly, we've seen 3 very bad Noldor, and 2 of them have redeemed themselves.
Will the third? I think you know the answer to that. Yeah. But for now, we're going to well, not quite yet. We're going to read a little bit more, and then we're going to head off and see. You know, meanwhile, on the other side of the pillory. But before we do, Yavanna weeps by the mound in fear that the darkness should swallow the last rays of the light of Valinor forever. Interestingly, the next line tells us that the Valar didn't get what had happened. They thought that maybe Melkor had called upon some aid that came from beyond Arda. They literally had no clue that Ungoliant was down there in Avathar.
Right, that's true.
Fascinating. We know that she didn't come from beyond Arda. I mean, she did in the beginning because she was one of the spirits that he corrupted. Right. But if you look at it that way, everything came from beyond Arda. But there's a key line here that I think we kind of blow over sometimes because, after all, the Silmarils are gone. But the text says that, and all one it may seem whether Fëanor had said yea or nay to Yavanna. Yet had he said yea at the first, before the tidings came from Formenos, it may be that his afterdeeds would have been other than they were. But now the doom of the Noldor drew near.
The doom,
and that's the bad version of the doom. That's not Mandos' judgment. That's just that's the horrible evil fate that's going to come along.
Yep. Yeah.
Just
and
a
fate that they've written. And I think that this passage is really telling. I think you're right. I think it is easy to blow over it, but it's so important because, you know, there is a reading of this text that suggests like, oh, well, the Silmarils were stolen, so, you know, there's nothing they could have done about it anyway. So it doesn't matter that Fëanor denied the Valar. Totally this right here tells us that it absolutely does matter.
Because if he had done it, he would have been humbling himself. Right. He would have he would have finally recognized his place, realized the light within them wasn't his own, and said yes. And that humility would have changed everything that happens after this.
Exactly. But instead, what he ends up doing is doubling down on his stupid pride. And we've talked about the fact that doubling down on bad decisions is just a classic villain behavior.
Throwing good money after bad.
Right.
Yeah. And well, so we're gonna step aside from the Noldor. We're gonna step aside from, you know, over dramatic Fëanor here. And we're going to go take a look at this first date of Morgoth and Ungoliant. I don't think it's going very well anymore. I'm sure Morgoth has said to her, "It's not you, it's me." But Sean, I'm going to have you tell us a little bit of the geography. There's a little beginning passage that talks about that. Sorry,
he's walking her home, and just the date's just not going well.
Not going well. Am I going to? I don't have to kiss her, do I?
Did we really? Did we really eat trees? What was that?
What was that all about? Man, that was weird. I took her to the restaurant and she ordered trees.
She ordered trees. She ordered light. What was up with that?
I don't know,
Oh
man.
man, we're too silly. Uh,
You know,
I'll take it.
yeah.
Meanwhile, Morgoth, escaping from the pursuit of the Valar, came to the wastes of Ahriman. This land lay northward, between the mountains of the Pelori and the Great Sea, as Avathar lay to the south. But Ahriman was a wider land, and between the shores and the mountains were barren plains, ever colder as the ice drew nearer. Through this region Morgoth and Ungoliant passed in haste, and so came through the great mists of Oyomure to the Helcaraxe, where the strait between Ahriman and Middle-earth was filled with grinding ice. And he crossed over and came back at last to the north of the outer lands.
Wow. Man.
So a bit of geography there.
Yeah, and again, you get to name the cool stuff. Oyomure and Helcaraxe.
Helcaraxe.
Yeah, whatever, you big word guy.
That was a fun one. Thanks for that.
I know, no problem. Yeah.
Helcaraxe. I love that word Helcaraxe. Actually.
Isn't that the coolest word?
It sounds like what it is. It's grinding ice is how it's usually translated.
It is the grinding ice.
It sounds like the Helcaraxe. It's very grindy.
It's clearly a place you don't want to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that much
Definitely.
is obvious.
Definitely. And it's important to we've talked a little bit about the larger geography of Arda, and there aren't really many good maps out there that show it. But the idea that Aman and Middle Earth in the north, they come really close together. There's a strait that separates them, and this strait is filled with this ice, the Helcaraxe.
Yeah.
And so it is
It's the Arctic Circle of this world.
Yeah, almost kind of like the Bering Strait in a way, I guess, although probably shorter because one can actually cross it on foot.
Yeah.
But that's really important because it can be crossed on foot, and we're going to see that later on.
Later on in this chapter, actually.
Yeah.
But not in tonight's episode.
Not tonight. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Outer Lands, of course, just as a reminder, folks, to the north of the Outer Lands does mean Middle Earth.
That's right. Good point.
That a few times. Just a reminder.
Yeah. So as there's
the
Avathar
geography.
to the south of Valinor, there's Ahriman to the north of Valinor, and that's where they're going all the way north so that they can cross. They cross back to Middle Earth at the Helcaraxe.
And there's a lot more space this time. With where Avathar, there's a very narrow space between the sea and the mountains, and up here the mountains go due north, and the land kind of curves to the northeast.
Kind of northeast to east. Yeah.
Exactly. So
and I guess you see in the next. I'm going to let you take the next passage because it's really funny what Morgoth is trying to do here.
Okay. So now Morgoth was drawing near to the ruins of Angband, where his great western stronghold had been, and Ungoliant perceived his hope, and knew that here he would seek to escape from her, and she stayed him. Hold on a moment. What happened here? And she stayed him, demanding that he fulfill his promise. "Blackheart," she said, "I have done thy bidding, but I hunger still." "What wouldst thou have more?" said Morgoth. "Dost thou desire all the world for thy belly? I did not vow to give thee that. I am its lord." "Not so much," said Ungoliant, "but thou hast a great treasure from Formenos. I will have all that, yea, with both hands thou shalt give it." Then perforce Morgoth surrendered to her the gems that he bore with him, one by one and grudgingly, and she devoured them, and their beauty perished from the world. Huger and darker yet grew Ungoliant, but her lust was unsated. "With one hand thou givest," she said, "with the left only. Open thy right hand." In his right hand Morgoth held close the Silmarils, and though they were locked in a crystal casket, they had begun to burn him, and his hand was clenched in pain, but he would not open it. "Nay," he said, "thou hast had thy due, for with my power that I put into thee thy work was accomplished. I need thee no more. These things thou shalt not have nor see. I name them unto myself forever." which he's done before. Didn't he name Arda to himself forever?
Yeah, everything he sees that he wants, he names it unto himself
Fell
forever.
I love that. He doesn't have a wish list. He just has a name unto myself forever.
I name these things unto myself
I
forever.
name this unto myself. I name this unto myself.
Unto myself.
Wow. I mean, I love that we... Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, can I just ask that you please do the Ungoliant voice again sometime? Not right now.
When you're least expecting it.
When yeah, just like do an intro in it or an outro in it.
Welcome to the prancing pony.
Very well done. Very, very, very nicely done. I love that. That was cool.
That was a fun one to do, no doubt.
But wow, there's so much in this passage.
Isn't there? Tons.
You know, I think the first thing that kind of comes up for me is, remember in the previous chapter, he promised to give her whatever she wanted with both hands.
Verily,
that's why she brings it up.
with both hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
He said that, and that's why she brings this up.
Mm-hmm. She remembers. She is not an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this though. She knows full well that he's going to try to ditch her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then she's, fulfill your promise. And this is what liars do. They lie. I mean,
Right.
They thieve. They don't keep their word even to each other.
Yeah.
There is no honor among thieves.
Yeah. And remember even, the great thief setting his snare for the lesser in the last paragraph.
Yeah.
It was always his intent to just, to rip her off.
Yeah. I mean, he gave her a lot, but he didn't give her with both hands.
Right.
And she,
that's true. Yeah.
she would have lusted for this light because she drank it all from the trees.
Yeah.
Sucking it down and, emptying the vats. And here's the last bit of that light.
It's like that last bite of steak sitting on the plate. She just can't you don't leave that behind. You
Look
eat
at that. There's like some marbling there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks perfect. A little pink in the middle. Yeah. For all vegetarians out there, we apologize. There's like that last piece of tofu on the... No, that does not work. Sorry, that just does not
I'm a
fly.
Texan. All my metaphors are steak metaphors.
And they're big.
That's right. 72
Because
ounces.
it's Texas. I love that we see, we talked about the sins and the hunger and the lust that we saw in her and the hatred and the things that we saw in him. And here we get it again. We first get the hunger, right? I hunger still. And then we get that her lust was unsated. So it just kind of reemphasizes what we talked about in that earlier chapter about the nature of the sins that are kind of their identifying sins.
Right,
because
right.
Morgoth, what's Morgoth? I didn't vow to give thee that. I am the Lord of the world.
Yeah, there's a little pride there.
That's some pride right there. And of course, lying, dishonor, just not honoring his word.
And also actually, pointing out that it was his power that he put into her that allowed her to accomplish her work. I mean, it's not inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
It is accurate, but to bring it up and to kind of use that as leverage. I don't know. We usually talk about Fëanor being like Melkor.
This time he's
This is like
Melkor's like Fëanor.
Yeah. It's like these are just characters who just don't see that they owe anyone else anything for their accomplishments. They only see their own.
Everybody
deeds.
exists to serve them.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Ungoliant exists to serve Morgoth. Everybody else, exists to serve Fëanor.
Yeah. This Lord of the World thing.
We'll get to more of
about that later.
Because there's another passage that's even stronger that we'll get to shortly. But let me go ahead and have you take the next passage about. Well, you just take it. I know what you want to do here.
Yeah.
You got.
So immediately after this, but Ungoliant had gone. Excuse me. Let me start that one over.
It happens all the time.
But Ungoliant had grown great, and he less by the power that had gone out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And she rose against him, and her cloud closed about him, and she enmeshed him in a web of clinging thongs to strangle him. Then Morgoth sent forth a terrible cry.
I don't mean to laugh.
Thongs?
Clinging thongs. I mean,
he's very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. Anyway, sorry. I do apologize to everybody, the whole universe.
And
just apologize to you all right now.
It's cold up there in the Helcaraxe.
So then what happened?
Then Morgoth sent forth a terrible cry, that echoed in the mountains.
Hmm.
Therefore that region was called Lamoth, for the echoes of his voice dwelt there ever after,
Hmm.
so that any who cried aloud in that land awoke them, and all the waste between the hills and the sea was filled with a clamor as of voices in anguish.
Wow. You know,
Oh.
this is another one of those moments where you see an explanation of a
Yeah.
natural phenomenon
Yeah.
through mythology. You know, you go to some canyon where there's a massive amount of echo, and, well, we can't just explain it away as just, you know, geology and geography. It's
right.
This
Yeah,
is
you've
where
gotta have
Morgoth and Ungoliant
there's-
had their little tussle.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have a little mythopoeia in there, you know,
I love
a
it.
mythic explanation for it. It's super cool, and it's chilling. It's
Oh,
such
isn't
a
it?
creepy.
Oh,
This
I
is one of
know.
the most vivid images of you know this part of Middle Earth to me.
Yeah.
I always think of the Lamoth. It's a creepy, creepy place.
It is a creepy
Um,
place. Not as creepy as we'll get with Nan Dungortheb, but
No,
Nan
that's true.
Dungortheb, but yeah,
And I want to get to that one in a minute,
you're
but
about to, yeah.
I want to just make a quick mention of this fact of the power that he put into her.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this earlier about the fact that the Valar have finite power, and we're going to see this again in a moment. I think you've got the
Yeah.
passage where we see this again.
Yeah, we
But
will.
but there's a few places here that we see this idea that Melkor, Morgoth now, has given his power to Ungoliant, and that it is a finite resource. So again, it's kind of like a zero sum.
Yeah.
For him to give it to her, he has to lose it. So well, I know we'll get back to that in a minute, but I think it's interesting that
It's definitely worth pointing out,
brought
no
up
doubt.
here.
So pick us back up again later in that paragraph, right?
Yep. So Morgoth cries, and who happens to be nearby? But the Balrogs.
Let the Balrogs, the
Balrogs.
Valarokar.
The Valarok are down in Angband, or what's left of Angband,
Right, right.
and they hear their master's voice, just like that RCA dog. Do you remember the dog from the RCA?
Oh, yes, I
RCA
do.
logo? Boy, talk about a dated reference.
Yeah, seriously, man. Come on. That and the road movies. People aren't even going to believe we're in our 40s. They're going to think we're like 60-some-odd-year-old guys hosting this.
I know. Anyway, so the Balrogs hear their master cry, and they basically just come to his aid. With their whips of flame, they smote asunder the webs of Ungoliant, and she quailed and turned to flight, belching black vapors to cover her. And fleeing from the north, she went down into Beleriand, and dwelt beneath arid Gorgoroth, in that dark valley that was after called Nandungortheb, the valley of dreadful death, because of the horror that she bred there. For other foul creatures of spider form had dwelt there since the days of the delving of Angband. And she mated with them and devoured them. Shelob's dad, by the way. Has to be one of those. And even after Ungoliant herself departed, and went whither she would, into the forgotten south of the world, her offspring abode there and wove their hideous webs. Of the fate of Ungoliant no tale tells, yet some have said that she ended long ago, when in her uttermost famine she devoured herself at last.
I'm like,
that one.
I don't even want to see a spider on the wall right now.
No.
I love, first of all, we get another geography lesson, right? We get Beleriand and we get the arid Gorgoroth. I love that it's not the Valley of Death. It's the Valley of Dreadful Death, because death isn't bad enough. This has to be dreadful death.
Right, that's true. Good point.
You know, it's
Yeah.
from the Department of Redundancy Department. Wow. So
Yeah.
once again, we see an Ainu, as we discussed, last time, mating with mortal creatures
Right,
and having offspring.
right. And I think we wondered, obviously Shelob's father must have been, some sort of
Mortal
incarnate
spider.
spider, some sort of mortal spider. Very big mortal spider, I'm sure.
Well, yeah.
And here
Very
we
dead mortal spider.
yeah, because he was eaten.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we kind of get a little bit of that. I also love that we don't know exactly what Ungoliant's ultimate
Yeah.
fate was.
Isn't that awesome, though?
Such a cool,
Oh.
such a cool. Some have said, but
Yeah. There's a lot of those some have said things in
Yeah.
the Silmarillion, but
Yeah.
this is an awesome one, and it's totally believable.
Yeah.
Out of her hunger.
yeah, I love it. It's such poetic justice, and I think even though it's it's left unclear because hey, sometimes mythology does that, but I think to me I feel like the suggestion is pretty strong that this is what happened to her. I know there are other versions of the tale that I won't get into, but I love the idea that she would have devoured herself at last. She can't. I mean, it's that insatiable hunger that we've talked about so many times. It is such a fitting end, and it's again it's again another one of those sort of what's the word? I don't know. It's just a fitting punishment.
It is. It is definitely fitting. Shortly after that, and we're going to get to see now what happens to Melkor, or I'm sorry, to Morgoth, now that his Balrogs have freed him. And he, being freed, gathered again all his servants that he could find, and came to the ruins of Angband. There he delved anew his vast vaults and dungeons, and above their gates he reared the threefold peaks of Thangorodrim, and a great reek of dark smoke was ever wreathed about them. There countless became the hosts of his beasts and his demons, and the race of the orcs, bred long before, grew and multiplied in the bowels of the earth. Dark now fell the shadow on Beleriand, as is told hereafter. But in Angband, Morgoth forged for himself a great crown of iron, and he called himself King of the World. In token of this, he set the Silmarils in his crown. His hands were burned black by the touch of those hallowed jewels, and black they remained ever after. Nor was he ever free from the pain of the burning and the anger of the pain. That crown he never took from his head, though its weight became a deadly weariness. Never but once only did he depart for a while, secretly, from his domain in the north. Seldom indeed did he leave the deep places of his fortress, but governed his armies from his northern throne. And once only also did he himself wield weapon while his realm lasted. For now, more than in the days of Autumno, ere his pride was humbled, his hatred devoured him, and in the domination of his servants, and the inspiring of them with lust of evil, he spent his spirit. Nonetheless his majesty as one of the Valar long remained, though turned to terror, and before his face all save the mightiest sank into a dark pit of fear. Tons of stuff here.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, first we get the creation of Thangorodrim.
It'll be one of our recurring places that we'll see quite a bit of.
Yes, and it'll probably be one of those places where I make a recurring pronunciation error. Every once in a while I'll probably say Thangorodrim, but I know it's Thangorodrim.
Thangorodrim.
We see the orcs come back in numbers. We see what he does with the Silmarils. I love that there's this deadly weariness in the weight of his crown. We'll talk about that crown here in a little bit, even in more depth. But it makes me think so much of the wrong that we do. And I'm thinking of Fëanor in this case, but even I could think of the things that I've done that have been stupid things. That weight becomes a deadly weariness. You know?
Yeah, and, I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, and here it's just, but he's too stupid to take it off.
Yeah, he refuses to. He's stubborn, refusing to take it off.
Stubborn. And then, of course, we talked earlier about spending his finite energy, and sure enough, he does two things, and two things only, that cause him to spend his spirit: dominating his servants, and then inspiring them with lust of evil. That's probably going to go through your spirit awfully quick. I'm thinking this is probably not your best miles per gallon for spirit expenditures. You know, he's not driving a Prius here.
It's got to be exhausting to hate that much. I mean, really.
Oh, it would just consume you and, turn you into nothing. Which is why, oddly enough, even though he proclaims himself to be king of the world, he doesn't really ever leave his secret cave, you know?
Right.
The Bat Cave, if you will. He doesn't even leave the deep places of his fortress.
He's a coward. He's a coward. He sends others to do his fighting for him, to do his bidding for him, with one exception. There's
Boy, is
one
that
exception.
foreboding or what?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And another passage, another chapter I can't wait for.
Oh, such a dramatic moment. But I want to come back to this King of the World thing.
I believe, yes, I do too.
You know, if you notice, this is capitalized world. This is not King of Arda. This is King of creation. We've talked before about how Tolkien uses the word world when it's capitalized like in Ainur Lindale, he's not talking about Arda. He's talking about the created universe, Ea.
Yep.
He's calling himself King of Ea, not King of Arda. So he's not just usurping Manwë here. He is usurping Iluvatar.
Yes, exactly.
Probably not his wisest decision, but,
No.
It's what he does.
That is an affront. That is that
is.
is just a pride and an affront.
Total pride.
Incredible.
He's unbelievable. But
yeah,
there's one other thing in here that I really wanted to pull out that I thought was absolutely worth talking about. Going all the way back, I was going to say to our first episode, but I think by the time we got to Mythopoeia, it was actually our second. So going back a very long way to the poem Mythopoeia, I'm going to read it looks like it's the second to last stanza. I will not walk with your progressive apes, erect and sapient. Before them gapes the dark abyss to which their progress tends, if, by God's mercy, progress ever ends, and does not ceaselessly revolve the same unfruitful course with changing of a name. I will not tread your dusty path and flat, denoting this and that by this and that, your world immutable, wherein no part the little maker has with maker's art. I bow not yet before the iron crown, nor cast my own small golden scepter down. I bow not yet before the iron crown. And I don't think it's a surprise that Melkor forges for himself a great crown of iron.
Yeah.
This is the Iron Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have the thing in mind already? I don't think so. I think this is a visual that he just had already kind of created in his mind, this idea of an iron crown of domination, of kind of the opposite of creation, of
it's a potent image. I mean,
it is, isn't it?
The symbolism in it is very, I think is very clear. Again, we always talk about there's no allegory, but that doesn't mean that there isn't symbolism.
Of course, there's some symbolism.
Iron is, it's obviously it's heavy. We've already talked about how heavy the crown is. It's the metal of weapons, right? I mean, it's the metal of domination, as you said. It's not a precious metal. It's not a beautiful metal.
This isn't silver. This isn't gold. Yeah. This isn't
right. It's utilitarian, but one could probably also say it's ugly. I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Some people out there who love iron.
Well, I mean, steel might be functional, but at least it's beautiful, or can be made beautiful. Iron really is. There's a reason there's something called pig iron, right? I mean, I don't think you get pig silver.
Right.
But,
right, exactly. It's a utilitarian metal. It's strong, and it's domination was a good word to use, but there's nothing beautiful about it. And I love
that's the thing. It's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I always think of I always look for things that contrast Morgoth as Dark Lord with Sauron as Dark Lord.
Oh yeah.
And I was trying to remember if we ever see Sauron wearing a crown. I don't know that we do. But certainly, even if we do, it's not what we associate him with. The artifact, of course, that we associate him with is the One Ring.
Right.
Which is evil, but it's pretty.
It is
and
pretty.
It's gold, and it is precious.
It would be like, it took me a second to get that. That would be like the Silmarils in the crown. I mean, here he's got this thing that I see as just a great set of contrast. You've got this ugly, functional, heavy, like you said, utilitarian iron crown, and in it he sets the beautiful things.
Right.
But they're
the
beautiful
only
things
thing
that
pretty
he
about
didn't
it
make.
is the thing that he stole. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
they both made the metal piece.
Yep.
But the only thing beautiful about Morgoth's crown is the Silmarils, which he stole, as you said.
Yeah.
I just think that's a fascinating contrast because it's one of those reminders that even Sauron has redeeming qualities that Morgoth does not have.
It's a good point.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I like that this comes up here because I think I'm kind of glad we have a chance to talk about the One Ring here because we talked about spending his spirit.
Oh yeah.
And
Sauron does the same. True.
Yeah. This is an idea that we're all familiar with from Lord of the Rings. It's this idea that Ainur have a finite source of power. Spending it means that they will weaken themselves as time goes on, as I've already said. And so you see that with Morgoth here, especially when you see that, he was never free from the pain of the burning of the Silmarils.
Isn't that a great line, too?
It is, yeah.
Ever free from the pain of the burning and the anger of the pain.
The anger of the pain. That's a good catch. And I'm reminded of, later on, there are times when he suffers wounds and eventually he's not even able to heal his own hurts.
You're right. He walks with a limp ever after
right
after a dramatic moment later on.
Right, exactly. And so his power is really, he's really depleted his power.
Very limited,
later on.
At this point, he's sunk all his powers into his military research and development.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right, exactly.
The orcs, and then eventually we'll see the dragons, and eventually, all the other horrible creatures that he'll create.
And with dominating them, because of course he can't give them life.
No, and inspiring them with lust of evil, which horrible thing. But let's not forget he's still powerful. Before his face, all save the mightiest sank into a dark pit of fear. We'll see how important that is later in a very important tale, several chapters from now. But
indeed.
I'm looking at our time and I realize we have to keep moving because we actually still have quite a bit to go. Oh my goodness, quite a bit to go, and we are already, well into into our podcast here, probably about 80 minutes in. So
we can do it. I think.
I know we can.
We're moving on to narrative.
It will probably push 2 hours. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, but so we're going to get here. Fëanor, kind of running for liar in chief, it would seem. I'm not sure who for president. If he's running, this year as well, I'm still not sure that there's a good candidate. No. So he first he shows up and he breaks the ban. He's not supposed to be here. So again he rebels against the Valar. Which, we've talked about the some of the similarities with Bab 5, and I think we pulled out a Kosh quote last time. Here's time for another one: impudent, disobedient.
Oh man,
he shouldn't have done this, but he did it. Yeah. And then I think you've got this passage here about him being a master of words.
Yes, I do. So, Fëanor was a master of words, and his tongue had great power over hearts when he would use it. And that night he made a speech before the Noldor which they ever remembered. Fierce and fell were his words. And filled with anger and pride.
And pride, there you go again.
And hearing them, the Noldor were stirred to madness. His wrath and his hate were given most to Morgoth. And yet well nigh all that he said came from the very lies of Morgoth himself. But he was distraught with grief for the slaying of his father, and with anguish for the rape of the Silmarils. He claimed now the kingship of all the Noldor, since Finwë was dead. And he scorned the decrees of the Valar.
Yeah, because, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Let's go scorn
the decrees.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to...
Anger, pride, fear, fell, madness, wrath. Yeah.
Do we still think that Fëanor might be a good guy?
Well, sure. It's just that he's distraught with the grief for the slaying of his father.
But he loved his dad.
He loved his dad. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am reminded here of another servant of Aule that we've seen in Lord of the Rings, a one-time servant of Aule,
yes,
who also had the gift of gab, as it were, in the Voice of Saruman chapter in the Two Towers. Yeah. This is what this always reminds me of. I mean, remember that Saruman's main weapon is his voice. And it's actually said, that his voice was low and melodious. It's very sound and enchantment. And those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard. And if they did, they wondered for little power remained in them. Mostly they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking, and all that it said seemed wise and reasonable. And desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. That just reminds me so much. I mean,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is this madness that they're. Hey, he's making perfect sense. No, he's not. But yeah, I mean, the parallel with Saruman, I think, is just really important there because, again, we know how well that ends for that guy.
Yes, it does. And just like Saruman, many times we see his skill as being described as subtle. We've talked about subtle before. He certainly seems to be using his subtlety here in that deceptive sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love, I think you use the phrase selective memory as you're going to see here in his passages. He claims about all the things that have been going on. But, before we tackle that, I'm stunned to see his claiming of the kingship.
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Because, who's been holding down the fort for these
Fingolfin
years?
has been doing a bang-up job.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to say that flippantly. He actually has been doing a good job.
He has been doing a good job.
While Finwë and Fëanor were,
off
having they were off at grudge camp.
Grudge camp.
Grudge camp.
Grudge.
Emo. Oh man, no, they're at grudge camp. But anyway, yeah.
I also find well, we'll get to this in a little bit. Let me tackle this next passage here. His speech, at least a little bit of it. Why, O people of the Noldor, he cried, why should we longer serve the jealous Valar, who cannot keep us, nor even their own realms, secure from their enemy? And though he be now their foe, are not they and he of one kin? Vengeance calls me hence, but even were it otherwise, I would not dwell longer in the same land with the kin of my father's slayer, and a thief of my treasure. Yet I am not the only valiant in this valiant people. And have ye not all lost your king? And what else have ye not lost, cooped here in a narrow land between the mountains and the sea? Here once was light, that the Valar begrudged to Middle-earth, but now dark levels all. Shall we mourn here, deedless forever? A shadow folk, mist-haunting, dropping vain tears in the thankless sea? Or shall we return to our home? In Cuivién and sweet ran the waters under unclouded stars, and wide lands lay about, where a free people might walk. There they lie still and await us, who in our folly forsook them. Come away. Let the cowards keep this city. Wow. Can we count the number of errors here?
Pretty bold, yeah.
I mean, first, the jealous Valar. Okay,
yeah.
They're really letting you do your own thing, buddy. I don't know what you're talking about.
They could stop you if they wanted to.
Oh, yes, they could. He is right that they can't keep their own realm entirely secure from the enemy.
That's true.
But this is the thing, he mixes truth with lies to become more effective, reminding them that the Valar and Morgoth are of one kin, which I find ironic because, in this particular situation, kinship is important, but kinship with his half-brothers means nothing.
Yeah.
Typical double standard of a evil villain, it only matters when it matters to him. He claims vengeance calls him hence, but he doesn't, want to live in this with the people that are related to the guy who killed his dad and stole his stuff. Right. I love the buttering up. I'm not the only valiant in this valiant people.
Yeah. He's got to get that little, kind of pander to the audience.
Yeah, pander.
One thing about kin of my father's slayer and the thief of my treasure. Let's just remember this next time.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
I'm going to want to come back to this.
That might become a little relevant next time.
Yeah.
The Valar supposedly begrudged the light to Middle-earth. Well, I don't know if they begrudged it. It just when they built them, the mountains were already there, and they did create the pass. But I love this. This is a typical. This is a straw man argument, right? It's either A or B. Either we're going to be valiant and get out of here. Where we can go back to Cuivién and we can, enjoy the wide lands, or we're going to mourn here.
We're going to mourn here deedless forever.
A shadow folk, mist haunting, dropping vain. Now that's a beautiful, beautiful sentence. Mourning here deedless forever. A shadow folk, mist haunting, beautiful language, but utterly false. I mean, talk about setting a worst case scenario.
Right.
How about we stay here with the Valar and help them
help rebuild or help do something new? Yeah, exactly.
And wait until they're ready, and we'll go with them to go tackle Morgoth. But no, let the cowards keep this city.
Yeah. I love this. I'll come back to let the cowards keep this city.
It kind of reminds me of one other thing, and I know this might be a stretch because you know me, I'm always pulling in stuff that like from the Bible that Tolkien might have thought about. This makes me think of some of the grumbling of the Israelites after they'd gotten out of Egypt. They've been out in the wilderness, and Moses has been God's been taking good care of them through things that He's done through Moses. But they're sitting there talking about, man, I remember how cool it was in Egypt. We had all this food and we never had to worry about anything, and it was just awesome, dude. So like here,
Wow. Yeah.
hey, look at how cool. Remember we were fools to leave Cuiviénen, just like the Israelites.
Right.
Like we were fools to leave Egypt.
To leave Egypt, to leave that slavery. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it's a little different because, of course, they weren't slaves in Cuiviénen, but it's that same sort of grumbling about, hey, you're in a place where all your needs have been met. Okay,
Right.
yeah, your father has been killed and your stuff has been stolen, but everybody else, we can rebuild.
Right.
But he wants to go back. So, yeah, really brilliant stuff.
Yeah. Well, and just what a good friend this guy is. Oh, well, the light's not here anymore, so let's leave.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, right? As you said, I mean, this A or B.
Yeah,
false decision
dichotomy.
that is put
Yeah.
before the Noldor. I mean, they could stay and rebuild. They could
absolutely
use that
could.
excellent Noldor skill to do something
Yeah.
good. And he won't. He's
No.
getting out of Dodge to go, get his vengeance, and it's
Yeah.
his personal vengeance, as you said.
It is.
He's really the only one who's been
Yeah.
wronged more than anyone else, because everybody else has lost the trees, sure, but
Right.
everybody's lost the trees.
Exactly. That's the thing. So now I'm not going to read the rest of this entire, because I mean, we'll be here all night, but there are a couple little bits and pieces that are really relevant. So he talks about, hey, let's go get some great lands. I love this part. He echoed the lies of Melkor that the Valar had cozened them and would hold them captive so that men might rule in Middle-earth. I want to look at that word. Cozened means to trick or deceive, to accomplish by deceit. So he's again saying that the Valar had deceived them. And again, he claims that they have been held captive. He might have just as well have used the word thraldom, which again,
yeah.
he doesn't know what that means.
Right.
So again, lying. He does, it's a pretty powerful, potent message that he says here that, hey, this is not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Say farewell to bondage, again, which you weren't in. I'm
Right.
just saying.
But say farewell also to
Yeah,
ease.
it's not going to be easy. It's not, and say farewell to the weak. Say
That's kind
farewell
of
to your.
That's
you
kind
know.
of a creepy one. Say
Isn't
farewell
it?
to the
Boy,
weak.
say farewell to the weak. Basically, it's like, okay, well, you're limping, you're leaving, you're
Yeah.
falling behind. We're just going to leave you behind.
Yeah.
Say farewell to your treasures. I think, though, he's actually slamming the Vanyar and the Teleri.
Probably
Teleri.
so. Yeah.
Say farewell to the weak. I think he's got such this, high vision of the Noldor as opposed to the other
You're
elf kinds.
probably are right about that, but
So he tells him, hey, we're gonna make more good stuff. Bring your swords. I have to say, I do love the language here. We will go further than Orome, endure longer than Tulkas. We will never turn back from pursuit after Morgoth to the ends of the earth. War shall we have and hatred undying. But then he gets stupid on us, doesn't he? When we have conquered and have regained the Silmarils, then. And I'm sorry, he's forgetting somebody, but he says, then we and we alone shall be lords of the unsullied light and masters of the bliss and beauty of Arda. Because the Valar are, and Manway's what? Is he
Right, well,
king of what?
but he's placing himself above the Valar here. I mean,
He is. He clearly is.
He's very clearly said that we will go further than
we
Orome.
alone shall be lords.
Right. And also the go further than
I
Orome,
know.
endure longer than Tolkas.
We're greater than them.
Yeah. So you stretched a little bit a moment ago. I don't think you stretched that much, by the way, but I'm going to stretch a little bit here. This reminds me of one of the classic things that you see over and over in Greek mythology. Is this we see hubris? Obviously the word hubris comes from Greek mythology, or comes from Greek. We've talked about Ophromode, which is the Anglo-Saxon sort of equivalent to that.
Overweening pride, yes.
Overweening pride, yeah. But this makes me think, this comparing himself favorably to the Valar, it reminds me of one of the things that you get a lot in Greek mythology is mortals saying, I'm better than this god, or I'm better than that god.
Well, you're right.
And it usually happens right before they get punished for it. I'm thinking specifically of, do you know the
true.
Greek story of Niobe? She was a woman who had...
You'll have to refresh my memory. I don't remember that one.
Interestingly, she had 7 sons.
Oh, now isn't that interesting?
Yeah. She also had 7 daughters, but she went taunting.
Wow.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. She actually stood on a mountaintop and taunted the mother of Apollo and Artemis and said, Leto only had 2 children, 1 boy, 1 girl. I had 7 boys and 7 girls. And so Apollo and Artemis struck down all of her kids.
Yeah, pretty easy to
So,
Oops.
it's just one of these classic mythological things, this,
Yeah.
this moment of pride that comes immediately before the
I'm
fall.
greater than the gods.
Yeah,
Masters of the bliss and beauty of Arda. You mean the place you didn't create? The
right.
place you didn't create with song? The place, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Again, not remembering his place, but
exactly.
you get the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad oath.
Yep,
So I'm
yep.
going to let you take
So,
that.
all right. Then Fëanor swore a terrible oath. His 7 sons leapt straightway to his side and took the selfsame vow together. And red as blood shone their drawn swords in the
Ooh.
glare of the torches. They swore an oath which none shall break, and none should take, by the name even of Ilúvatar, calling the everlasting dark upon them if they kept it not. And Manwë they named in witness, and Varda, and the hallowed mountain of Taniquetil, vowing to pursue with vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world, Vala, demon, elf, or man as yet unborn, or any creature, great or small, good or evil, that time should bring forth unto the end of days, whoso should hold or take or keep a Silmaril from their possession. Thus
Wow.
spoke Maedhros, and Maglor, and Celegorn, and Curufin, and Caranthir, Amrad and Amras, princes of the Noldor, and many quailed to hear the dread words.
Wow. I mean, just,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And none should take.
Oh yeah, that's pretty
Just
telling. Yeah.
Basically, just in case you're thinking about making an oath like this, yeah, you probably shouldn't
You
do
should
it.
never do this.
And this is really an overly general, this is like lawyers wrote it, isn't it? I shouldn't say overly general. I meant overly specific. Vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world, Vala, demon, elf, or man as yet unborn,
Right.
including, but not limited to,
Yeah.
any creature, great or small, or any other description thereof, good or evil.
And heretofore and notwithstanding the
Yeah,
above,
I
and
know,
should
exactly.
keep the Silmaril. Yeah.
I mean, it's just totally over the top.
Yeah. And it's very clear they should never have done this.
No, they should
Pride.
not.
Overmastering pride.
Boy, that really is Opher mode, isn't it? I mean, right
Mm-hmm.
there. Yeah, just crazy.
Yeah.
So we get some responses. Let's go into the responses. Fingolfin and Turgon his son therefore spoke against Fëanor, and fierce words awoke, so that once again wrath came near to the edge of swords.
That's not a surprise.
No, it's not. But Finarfin spoke softly, as was his wont, and sought to calm the Noldor, persuading them to pause and ponder ere deeds were done that could not be undone. And that's pretty wise advice. And Orodreth alone of his sons spoke in like manner. Finrod was with Turgon his friend, but Galadriel, the only woman of the Noldor to stand that day tall and valiant among the contending princes, was eager to be gone. No oaths she swore, but the words of Fëanor concerning Middle-earth had kindled in her heart, for she yearned to see the wide unguarded lands and to rule there a realm at her own will. Of like mind with Galadriel was Fingon, Fingolfin's son, being moved also by Fëanor's words, though he loved him little. And with Fingon stood as they ever did Angrod and Aignor, sons of Finarfin. But these held their peace and spoke not against their fathers. So what do we have? We have the breakdown. We've got Fëanor's half-brother and nephew, fierce words.
Yeah.
The other half-brother and nephew spoke softly and sought calm. We get
And this is typical. I mean, certainly typical of
Oh,
Fingolfin and Finarfin. who we know
That's
pretty
very
well by
much
this
their
point.
personalities. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the sons of Finarfin, Finrod, stands with Turgon. So that's their cousins. So he's standing with his cousin Turgon. Galadriel, another child of Finarfin, she desires the realm in Middle-earth. Fingon.
This
also
one's
wants
interesting. I want to linger on Galadriel just for a moment
Yeah,
because it's
worth
interesting.
doing.
I mean, we know that Galadriel and Fëanor were unfriends,
I love that.
but she
Such
had
a word.
she had
Such
yeah,
a
I know.
word.
She had her own agenda for wanting to go back to Middle Earth. There's
yeah.
a little bit of her own pride there.
Oh, very much so. That
and
is
I think
her.
that's
She
very
has a
interesting.
weakness there, no doubt.
And I think we talked about that before. I think we spent a little time looking at her
Yeah.
her temptation in Fellowship of the Ring
Yeah.
in the light of some stuff in the Silmarillion.
Fortunately, by that point, she'd really grown a lot of wisdom. She was not this young, fiery Noldor. By that point, of course, she's also the most powerful elf in the world. I mean,
Right.
because Fëanor's gone, and we're told that she was and Fëanor were the most powerful of the Noldor.
Right.
So, Yeah, it is interesting that we get to see her here. And then Fingon, like Galadriel, wants a realm. And then we get Angrod and Aignor, who are brothers with Finrod and Galadriel. So they're sons of Finarfin. They stand with Fingon.
But they didn't say anything.
No, they didn't.
They didn't speak against their father.
No. And that's fine. I mean, but again, we see, we talked earlier about how the sons of Finarfin were close with the sons of Fingolfin, and there we go. That's they're not as close with the sons of Fëanor anymore, are they?
Right.
But Fëanor prevails, and they get ready to head out. And again, this is just thus begins the road trip of doom.
They weren't very well prepared. I love that all was done in overhaste.
Overhaste. I love that word. And this is interesting. Fëanor drove them on, fearing lest in the cooling of their hearts his words should wane and other counsels yet prevail. He knows full well that what he's doing is wrong, and that if people stopped and listened to counsel, which of course he never did, that he would lose his persuasion, that they would not follow him. Yep. So he's going to, light a fire under their butts and get them moving. Yeah.
But so that by the time they realize what mistake they've made, it's
too late.
Too late.
Yeah. Which is, again, not only is that pride and overweening pride, the Ophir mode, this is just absolute selfishness. He is going to destroy the Noldor utterly in an effort to just get his one thing.
Just to get his way.
To get his way. To spite the Valar, to get supposed vengeance for his father's death, and to get his Silmarils back. Not that he's going to share the Silmarils with the Noldor, because as we know, he's already denied the sight of all of them to all but his sons and his father.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, exactly.
Why would anybody want to help him? Why would anybody want to help get
Nobody's lost anything here. I mean, the trees, but
Well, right, but that's a universal
everybody's
loss.
lost the trees. This is a personal grievance of Fëanor's.
But he's making it not personal by trying to drag
down with him.
Exactly. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then, interesting, the Valar would not hinder, right? From Valmar, no message came. Manwë was silent. He wouldn't forbid or hinder Fëanor's purpose. So, the Valar are aggrieved. They're offended. They're saddened by the fact that they've been charged with evil intent. So they basically sat back. But really, Fëanor had put them in that spot. He'd so poisoned the minds of the Noldor that had the Valar even tried to stop them long enough to give them counsel, to do like what Finarfin did and say, hey, you might want to think about this. Hey, if you still want to leave tomorrow, that's totally fine, but just, take some time to think. If they even did so much as that, Fëanor would claim to have been proven right that they are supposed thralls. So they're really in a no-win situation here. They had to go totally hands-off.
Yeah.
Even though, part of me is like, what are you doing? Do something, intervene. But they really can't, because all they would have done is proven Fëanor right.
Yeah, that's true. That is really true.
But so then the split happens, right? They set out. He thinks he's got them all under control, but they're like, wait a minute. Your dad was unkinged, held himself unkinged, the overreactive, like father, like son, all those years ago. And, we've been, Fingolfin's been a really good king. We're not gonna renounce him. So
greater love was given to Fingolfin and his sons. Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's not just his kingship, but also just the love. Yeah, I suppose it's a subject's love for a monarch, sure, but
right.
But it's they really did love and respect Fingolfin.
Yeah, they did, and for good reason. As we'll see here, he really is being a good king. In fact, you're going to take that next passage about the split and about how they take the road together.
Yeah, and let's spend some time. Well, I'll read it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the three different sons.
Right.
And thus at the last, as two divided hosts, the Noldor set forth upon their bitter road. Fëanor and his following were in the van, but the greater host came behind under Fingolfin.
Before you go on, I want to make sure people understand the van. That's the front, the vanguard.
Front,
it's not.
like the vanguard,
they weren't like in the Chevy Astro at the front.
Oh, that's a good. That's awesome. It's an awesome image.
They're all piling in the van.
Fëanor and his guys have the.
It's van. A van conversion, dude. It's It's got the tall roof. It's got air conditioning, satellite, the whole 9 yards. Man, we're just gonna take a road trip. We're gonna cruise up the. No, it's one of those words that.
No, it's a good point. It's one of those.
Vanguard, I think most people get, but I think van on its own doesn't necessarily trigger that. So I just want to make sure people get that. So they're in front because they're not patient, right?
Right, exactly.
So then who follows behind them?
But the
Sorry.
greater host came behind under Fingolfin, and he marched against his wisdom, because Fingon his son so urged him, and because he would not be sundered from his people that were eager to go, nor leave them to the rash counsels of Fëanor.
Now that's being a good king.
That is being
He doesn't want to be sundered from his people or leave them to the rash counsels of Fëanor. He is going to go.
He's making a sacrifice.
He is.
Sacrificing for his son and for his people, for the good of his people.
Yeah.
Compare that with, the selfish impatience of Fëanor and his buddies in the van.
But this is steadfastness. This is his buddies in the van. I'm seeing one of those like 70s vans with a round porthole window in the back and like the really cool airbrush painting on the side.
Just an airbrush painting of Noldor with swords or something.
Or maybe the Silmarils.
Or the Silmarils of the two trees.
Yeah, it's probably going to look like a Ted Naismith painting probably.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. But tacky, really tacky.
But really, really tacky. And it's probably got velvet on the inside of the van.
Right. Okay.
All right. So sorry. So we've got Fëanor up front. Big group of people with Fingolfin, and he's going because he wants to take care of his people. Nor did he forget his words before the throne of Manwë. Steadfastness comes back to bite you.
Exactly. Here's where he's saying that I'm going to stick with you, brother, half brother in blood,
full brother in heart wilt thou be.
Yep. But most loath was he to depart. So he didn't. That's
Finarfin. Right. So Fingolfin.
I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
Skipped a line there.
With Fingolfin, I skipped a couple of lines. With Fingolfin went Finarfin also, and for like reasons. But most loath was he to depart. Yeah. So he really wanted to stay more than the rest of them.
Yeah.
But he went for like reasons.
Yeah, we'll see what he gets to do too, right?
Yes, we will. And of all the Noldor in Valinor, who were grown now to a great people, but one tithe refused to take the road. And there we'll stop to point out that tithe that's the original sense of tithe is 1/10.
Yep.
Some for the love that they bore to the Valar, and to Aule not least. Some for the love of Tirion and the many things that they had made. None for fear of peril by the way.
Yeah, that's important. These aren't cowards that are staying.
Exactly. And Fëanor
would say
just
otherwise.
Call them cowards.
Well, yeah, leave the weak.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And I think that's very, very interesting that they all have their own reasons for staying, but none of them were doing it because they were scared.
Right.
Very cool.
So that's the split. So we've got, so at the back is going to be Finarfin hanging out, really not wanting to even go. Fingolfin going because he loves his people and his son, and Fëanor because he's Fëanor. But even as the trumpet sang and Fëanor issued from the gates of Tirion, a messenger came at last from Manwë, saying, Against the folly of Fëanor shall be set my counsel only. Go not forth, for the hour is evil, and your road leads to sorrow that ye do not foresee. No aid will the Valar lend you in this quest, but neither will they hinder you. For this ye shall know, as ye came hither freely, freely shall ye depart. But thou, Fëanor, Finwë's son, by thine oath art exiled. The lies of Melkor thou shalt unlearn in bitterness. Vala he is, thou sayest. Then thou hast sworn in vain, for none of the Valar canst thou overcome now or ever within the halls of Ea, not though Eru whom thou namest had made thee thrice greater than thou art. Wow.
Boy, what a putting him in his place.
Seriously. First of all, I have to wonder if this is Eonwë, Manwë's herald. There's nothing in the text to say it, but come on, it's got to be him. I mean,
I hope
the messenger came from Manwë,
and
we find out later he's called the herald, right? Because Fëanor laughed and spoke not to the herald. So we're probably talking about Eonwë here, who is the mightiest in arms of all who are in Arda.
Yeah. No slouch.
No slouch, no. And probably not somebody you want to tick off. But anyway, I find it interesting that he says specifically, if you were 3 times as great, and, here is him and his 2 half-brothers, 3 of them. It won't matter that there's all 3 of them. And, of course, that would assume that they are each as great as Fëanor, which we know they're not. Fëanor is the greatest in power of the Noldor who ever was. But, yeah, you're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah,
the Herald really is putting him in his place. And of
He
course,
is.
classic Fëanor, he does not get
no,
it.
he doesn't. But first, I wanted to point out we got bitterness again, right? But this time it's from the Herald telling him, you're going to unlearn these lies, but it's going to be bitter. It will not be a pleasant experience. But yeah, everybody else could come back. You can come, you got here freely. You can leave here freely. Except for you.
Except for you, Fëanor.
And your 7 sons, presumably.
Yeah.
So they're going to turn his bedroom into a workout room and change the locks on the doors.
Tulkas's workout room.
Yeah, Tulkas workout. Oh, cool, man. I
Tulkas
get
need
another
weight bench.
I need more exercise stuff. So the next section, I can't, we're running out of time to read the whole thing, but there are some bits and pieces that are spectacular in Fëanor's response, but also, once again, demonstrative of pride, of Overmod, and of not getting it. I love this. First, he doesn't even respond to the Herald. He just talks directly to the people. Very much some sort of a...
He laughs.
He laughs at a messenger from the king of Arda.
Yeah.
So, will this valiant people send forth the heir of their king alone into banishment with his sons only? Well, they should, actually.
Like, you guys wouldn't do that to me, would you?
Yeah. And return to their...
No, you wouldn't do that.
No, and return to their
said, yes,
bondage. Because once again, sure, they're going to return to their bondage because that's what they've been in.
Because they were thralls.
But if any will come with me, I say to them, is sorrow foreboded to you? This is interesting. He points out truthfully, we have seen sorrow here. We've come,
that's true.
We were happy, and now we're sad. We think that if we leave here, we can flip it over. We can go the other way around. Grass is always greener. Let's go over there.
Right.
So then he does turn and speak to the Herald, and he tells him, I've got a message for Manwë. I may not be able to overthrow Morgoth, but I'm not delaying to assail him. And I'm not just sitting around crying in my coffee or whatever.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Which is funny because, of course, he brooded in the dark earlier because that's what Fëanor does.
That's true.
I think he probably does sit, in his grief, but he doesn't sit idle.
That is kind of a slap to the Valar, and
isn't it?
Not entirely untrue. Again, I don't think it's fair to say that the Valar are sitting idle now.
No.
But they certainly have spent a lot of time sitting idle for the last few ages.
They have. We've criticized them for that, rightly so.
And so there, again, there's always that seed of truth in the worst lies.
Yeah, and then even here, this is the part where you almost want to admire him. He says, "Such hurt at the least will I do to the foe of the Valar, that even the mighty in the ring of doom shall wonder to hear it. Yea, in the end they shall follow me." And spoiler alert, eventually they do.
Yeah.
Many chapters later. But
they'll come to clean up his mess.
Yeah, they're gonna come. Exactly, that's about right. Mom, Dad, can you come get me?
Yeah.
Car won't start.
Right.
In the end, they shall follow me. It's hard not to like him there, but it's again pride. He's just being absolutely foolish. But
it's interesting you say that it's hard not to like him because even the Herald bows before him.
Says,
you've
given me an answer.
You've given me an answer. Yeah.
And boy,
that's an interesting. There's certainly no reason for the Valar to appease Fëanor, to condescend.
No. Well, and he's exiled.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
They
don't have to patronize anything.
No.
But for him to bow, obviously this, he was full answer.
Yeah.
That is answer.
Yeah. Got his answer. So then, what? How did everybody respond when they left? They continued their march, but now they each seemed to have a different approach, didn't they?
Yeah. So now slowly and less eagerly came the host of Fingolfin after them. Obviously, they've seen how the Valar feel about all this, and they're like, I'm not really sure we really want to do this now. Of those, Fingon was the foremost.
Yeah.
But at the rear went Finarfin and Finrod, and many of the noblest and wisest of the Noldor. And often they looked behind them to see their fair city.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because earlier you get the Fëanor, not once did they turn their eyes back to Tyrion.
That's true.
And the Green Hill.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And
then,
but here you see the wisest are the ones that are looking back. A really potent image that the wisest are really regretful of what they're doing.
Wow. Absolutely. Well, more than any, I'll just take this last line. So they look behind them to see their fair city until the lamp of the Mindon Eldadieva was lost in the night. More than any others of the exiles, they carried thence memories of the bliss they had forsaken, and some even of the things that they had made there they took with them, a solace and a burden on the road. And on that cheerful note, we will wrap up this episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. As always, thank you very much for joining us.
And join us again next time when we finish up the chapter and we get to a couple of the most famous passages in the whole Silmarillion. Spoiler alert, it's the doom of Mandos and the kinslaying at Alcalande.
One of the most horrible events.
Yeah.
And then the prophecy of the North. So, yeah, to be fair, not in that order, because, of course, Fëanor still hasn't screwed it up badly enough. More chances. More chances. And Fëanor does the same thing every time.
Yeah.
Well, as always, if you need cheap paperbacks to mark up, you haven't been writing in your books, use the links in our library page at theprancingponypodcast.com. There's some cheap paperbacks. I think the Silmarillion is less than $10. We also have some links to audiobooks, music CDs, and other cool things for your Tolkien collection.
Yep, and if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music. Please take a moment to write us a review if you can. We really appreciate it. We're also on Stitcher and TuneIn. And our social media, I'm happy to say, are lighting up like a Silmaril in the darkness. Thanks to those of you who are visiting us online. We really appreciate the feedback, the commentary, and the corrections.
Well, okay, some of us more than others, but yes.
On Facebook, we're at the Prancing Pony Podcast. You can get current updates, listen to previous episodes, and interact directly with Alan and me. We're also on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod, where I'm actually currently working through some pictures of Alan's Tolkien collection, including some really rare pieces.
So if you want that rare, no first edition Lord of the Rings, that's for sure.
No, rarer than mine though. I'm in envy. So if you want to gawk at his collection the way I do, follow us, reply to us, and retweet us to your friends and say, "Hey, I know these guys. They're really, really nerdy."
Well, and then we take that as a compliment.
We do. But
my book collection isn't all that impressive. I'm still waiting to win the lottery so I can buy a first edition of The Hobbit or something like that. But they cost more than a BMW, so probably not going to happen. One last thing. Don't forget to send your questions, comments, or your top 5 tips for surviving thraldom in Valinor to the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com, and we'll try to get them into our next episode. Well, my goodness, 2 hours is still far too short a time to spend amongst such admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.